As you think about bringing kind of veganism to the world, a lot of times we think there's one way to do it. We see a certain style or approach online, and we sometimes forget that our gifts are valuable. That's really one of my huge takeaways from this amazing interview I had with Dr. Angela Crawford. And what we talked about is how important it is for everyone to find their voice, how important it is for everyone to find their space in this world, and especially as you transition to becoming a vegan, and for my folks out there that are vegan business owners, as you transition to starting your vegan business. So if you've been trying to navigate the space, if you've been trying to get a sense of where and how can your gifts be utilized, I think this interview is going to really touch your heart and help you understand where and how to move forward. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to our Pivot podcast. I'm so excited today to talk to our guest for a couple of reasons. We have known each other for years. It's really fun when I get to catch up with some of my favorite people, which would include our guest today, to not only talk about all the great things that she's been up to, but really what I'm excited about today's discussion is talking about that kind of vegan transformation, that vegan journey. For many of us who are already vegan, many of us who may be starting on that journey, we know that going vegan isn't just a decision. It isn't just a point in time. Often there's some emotions that come with it. Often there's that social side of things that we have to digest and navigate through. And one thing that I think is amazing about our guest today is that she is an expert to help us through that. And I say that because even some of us who have been vegan for a while need support. We need ideas. We need to know how to navigate. As well as for many of you who listen to this podcast or are watching this video, some of you may be in business in what you're doing as a vegan entrepreneur because it's asking you to express yourself a little bit differently as a vegan entrepreneur, maybe trying to navigate through some of those emotional hurdles, maybe navigating through social feedback or information you received. Maybe you had a non-vegan business that you converted to a vegan business. So I'm hoping in today's discussion, you're going to get some nuggets, you're going to get some ideas, because our guest is not only an author, not only an educator, but also a psychologist. So you're going to get some expertise today. Remember, this is time to pick up a pen, or if you're listening to this, don't worry, we'll have show notes. But I think you're going to be really excited about what you're going to learn and how what you learn today will be something that will be truly actionable. So first, let me welcome my guest, Angela. It's wonderful to see you as always.
Oh, it's great to see you too. It's just wonderful to catch up again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I did my spiel and talked about my experience and everything, but I always love it where people can introduce themselves in their own words. I mean, anything you want to share with our audience, especially with your background, your experience, and what you really want to make sure that, your kind of mark on veganism and helping people through this journey, what you want to make sure they hear.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I've been a psychologist for many years. It's going on like 27 years that I've been a licensed psychologist. And for most of that, for 25 years of that, I was a psychotherapist and helped people through all kinds of things, health issues, trauma, stress. But, I guess 18 years ago plus, I became vegetarian first for ethical reasons. And then over time, as I kept learning more, I finally knew that I needed to become vegan just to fully align with my values. And that took a little while, but that was 2019. And when that happened, I just somehow knew that veganism, being vegan, living compassionately, not eating animals, not, doing my best not to buy animal products, all of that stuff, it was linked to so many things I cared about: our planet, sentient beings, and not wanting to harm them. And then human health. I'd spent all these years helping people, many of them having chronic medical conditions that are worsened by our food choices. And I hadn't always gotten that link myself, for many years before I became vegetarian and then vegan. I was not a healthy eater myself. And so, and I thought I had to eat meat and dairy, because that's what I'd been taught, and I didn't eat healthy foods. So I just started to realize once I became vegan and I just learned all the different stuff, all the health benefits, all the ethical benefits and environmental, I just knew that it was beyond just a personal choice for me. It was something where, like, if I could help other people on this journey, that it would help humanity and our world in ways, beyond myself. And I really also saw a psychological connection that our food choices are deeply psychological and social. We don't just eat in isolation, and it's very much tied to, our cultural upbringing, our social conditioning, our family relationships, our personal preferences and addictions even. So I just felt called to bring psychology together with veganism in some way. And it's been a discovery process how that would exactly unfold. But one aspect of it was researching and writing a book. So the vegan transformation.
And the book's available now, right? If someone
Yes,
is
it
looking for the book,
is. Yes,
interested
I
in
have
the
a
book,
copy here.
woo, right there. Okay, perfect, perfect.
Yeah, it's available
So,
wherever anybody buys books, in paperback, ebook, and now recently audiobook. So yeah, it's available at all major booksellers. Came out April
okay.
22nd, Earth Day.
Oh, great. Well, first off, I just want to say congratulations. Because writing a book is hard work. It is not something that everyone is able to do. And I think it is just an amazing accomplishment. So maybe let's give people a little bit of insight into the journey, what you did discover as you were writing the book. Because I think sometimes, when you're working or coaching and working with people one on one, it's a little bit different than when you build a book to help a larger group of people through this transformation. When you
Yeah.
have to also decide what information goes in the book and what information just can't make it in
Yeah.
before because of all different reasons. And then also, I've heard, because I haven't written my book yet, I should say, a lot of people talk about that personal discovery that they go through just the process of writing a book. So I know I give you a lot of questions there, but
Yeah.
maybe just give everyone a little bit of insight of what writing a book has, that experience has been for you as far as developing your message, as well as, your self-discovery and how it's really came to be.
Yeah. It was a really amazing process. I mean, I'd had a vision of writing a book since childhood, so it's really been a long dream. And when I became vegan, I had a sense like I would write a book about something related to veganism. But what unfolded in early 2021, I gave out a survey online that was asking vegans about how being vegan had affected them emotionally, psychologically, socially, and spiritually, which was a piece that I felt was missing. There's a lot about the health benefits, the physical health benefits, but not so much about, well, how do we as vegans get affected in terms of our more emotional well-being and our spiritual well-being when we go on this vegan journey. And so I surveyed people, and then from those, about 350 surveys were turned in. From those, I went on to do interviews with 75 people in depth. And so what came together to form the book was the core findings from these interviews and surveys. There were 7 themes that came through. And so the book shares these themes and how people benefited. It shares their stories as well as different exercises that the reader can engage in to I guess develop that theme in their own life. And the themes are things that are common in what is called positive psychology, things like values alignment, compassion, purpose, authentic fulfillment, empowerment, connection. These are all themes that came through that I elaborate on in the book. And how can we deepen these in our life, wherever we are on the journey, whether someone's veg curious and just wanting to learn more about being plant-based or vegan, or whether someone's already vegan, but just wanting to deepen into their journey and really thrive emotionally on that journey. So as far as the process, the interviews and surveys took quite a while, and then compiling the results and seeing the themes. And then the writing part, that that took a little bit to get going. There was a lot of stops and starts with that, and for a while I was working full time as a therapist. So I kept thinking I'm never going to get this together to actually get it to the publisher. I finally, I got a publisher with Lantern Publishing, who works a lot with vegan and animal rights and other kinds of social justice kinds of things. They're a great publisher. There were many people that helped me on the journey. I will just say that. Mitali, I cannot, De Perquesa, I don't know if I could pronounce her last name right, but she had a book, self-paced book writing group that gave me a lot of insights about the process. For example, I learned about creating an outline, a very detailed outline of the book and the chapters content, and then dictating chapters, which I'm not very good at. But then I could get the transcript, using something like Otter AI. And while I didn't feel like that turned out super well, that I'm not a very good dictator for a chapter, it actually gave me a starting point rather than a blank page. So those were some of the tips that I learned. And then over time, I got a routine with writing and really got into a flow with it, especially when I got close to the deadline.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, I think sometimes it's the getting started that is one of the
Yeah.
hardest things to do. I think a lot of times we're like, where do I enter this process? So yeah, I used to even do that with some of my content because I'm not a natural writer, and I would just open up a Google Doc and hit the dictation, and I'm like, okay, now I see what I'm thinking in words on a page. I can flow from there. So I definitely can
Yeah.
relate.
Yeah, I did find it more helpful than I thought, even though I think some people might do better at it than I did. It was very rough. It's still, like you say, having words on a page rather than just a blank page really gave me a place to go with it and then shape it and refine it.
Perfect. So, with the book, where do you see things going? Meaning the work that you want to do in the world, the good you want to do in the world, but also shape a business around it.
Yeah.
Where do you see things going? Do you see the book as your guide to help, a larger group of people kind of get introduction to these concepts? Then if people need more work, they can work with you one on one. I don't know if you have future plans for other
Yeah.
programs or anything like that, or any super secret stuff you want to share. But
Yeah.
how do you envision kind of working with people and helping not only kind of the masses, but maybe even helping individuals that are maybe struggling today?
Yeah. Yeah, there's different levels of that. So, one level is that as the book has been launching, it's given me a platform to do a lot more speaking and presenting. So that's been one piece of the puzzle. For example, at Veg Fest and some conferences and lots of different podcasts and then, guest articles. There's something about a book that I think gives an added opportunity, I guess, to share the message. It puts what you're wanting to share in a framework that people can maybe understand it more than they might otherwise. So, where it will go from there, I definitely am moving towards some different kinds of groups that might also have an individual component that would help people in different places on their journey. I love both helping on two levels. One is the veg curious, like in my local community. I'm a food for life instructor. And so I find that through food, it's a great way to introduce people to the plant-based vegan lifestyle or health issues. That's often a door that people are struggling. And so the food for life classes are a great way to bring plant-based and vegan living into my local community. And from the food for life, offering some additional classes that might have more of the holistic part of it, like handling the social situations, thriving in mind, body, and spirit. All the pillars of lifestyle medicine really added in. And then on the more online world, helping people that are either already vegan or on that journey towards veganism with the more psychosocial aspects of thriving, because that is what research shows is the biggest challenge that people have on the journey, whether to a plant-based lifestyle for health or a vegan lifestyle for ethics. being the only one in our social group? Or how do I handle, when I am dealing with family dynamics and other things? And also, just one of the themes that came through my book, in addition to the social challenges, is so many people, once they become vegan, find this sense of purpose. Well, how do we express our voice and our purpose in a way that actually has an impact and it feels aligned for us? So those are some of the different areas that I see, like my groups and classes unfolding to support people. Have done some of it. Right now I've been on a little break from some of that as I've been in book launch mode, but we'll get back in the fall to some more groups, both locally and online.
And that makes sense. I think a lot of times people just need that help. Sometimes it's framing the message, sometimes it's how to say it, how to manage not just their emotions when they're expressing it, but other people's emotions that are coming towards them. Because sometimes it turns into a little bit of a dance. And I think that leads me into my next question. And I'm just going to mention this, and you can let me know if you want to take this question in a different direction. But for a lot of people, when they think about being, kind of a spokesperson for veganism, they feel like they have to have the bullhorn. They have to have a
Mm,
loud voice. They have to be an
mm,
extrovert. They have to be the
mm,
person that's going to get out there and do anything and everything. And therefore, I think that some people who are introverts, people
mm,
who maybe have just naturally a softer voice or demeanor and so forth. And they struggle with, is there a place for them to
mm,
express? Is there a place for them to get the word out? And is there a way for them to do it that complements who they are, as opposed to they have to like transform into this other person? I wonder if you have some insights or some thoughts around that, because I
mm,
do think sometimes the conversation around veganism can sometimes be dominated by A, B, and C personalities. And I've
mhm.
always thought we need more of diverse personalities because we're trying to connect so many people worldwide.
Yeah. What you're saying resonates with me so much. First of all, as you and I have talked in the past, I've always identified, well, I can't say I always identified as an introvert because I didn't always know what it was. But once I understood truly what an introvert was, that certainly has resonated for me. I'm a person who, after being in a crowd, needs time to recuperate on my own and with quiet. And in the past was, fairly shy. And I still have that reserved, shy part of me in certain kinds of social situations. So I can resonate with what you're saying so much. And I know there's others out there that can resonate. And I think, one thing that I help people with even before becoming vegan was this whole thing of purpose and gifts and where do we fit in the world to offer our gifts. So this was already a passion for me. I taught classes in my church on gifts discovery and how are we meant to serve. And so this really fits well into the vegan end of things as well. And there is a chapter in my book on this as about purpose, but I think we each have a way to bring our gifts and personality. And as you're suggesting, it's not always going to be being loud. You know, for me, for example, the book was a way that I could bring the message out because for me, writing was a gift and a passion and a way that I could express myself that sometimes is hard and more verbal conversations. And it also helped me find my words too, because I had to search them out to put them on paper. So I think other people might have other ways they share their gifts and passions, but there is a place for us. And you're right. Some people resonate with me as a kind of quieter, softer person that they might not with somebody else, but vice versa is true too. That other personality is going to be the one that appeals to some other person on their journey. So we all have a place and gifts to bring.
And I love that you were used the word gifts to bring, because I think sometimes what can happen in our society is we start to frame either personalities or approaches as bad or good.
Mm,
And we actually say, well, this one's more ideal, as opposed to saying that they're all gifts. There are, they all have that value, because I do think that's how many of us do get sometimes, I don't want to say confused, maybe that's not the right word, but sometimes maybe the doubt builds in us
mm,
because we think because we're not what other people are saying is the good, then we are maybe not the optimal, or we become the yin yang kind of black and white look of things, as opposed to saying that, hey, there's a range.
Mhm.
There's it's not that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and just, in my interviews with vegans, they were bringing their gifts in such a variety of ways. I shared several different avenues that people were going, from, the food aspect of it, to the more animal advocacy aspect of it, to the health aspects, to more the business end of it, to volunteering, to having a business, and so many different ways that people were bringing their gifts and their unique way. And I think it's all needed and all benefits us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you're moving forward, as you're kind of figuring out the next chapter in, how you're going to be serving people, one thing I always love to kind of share or hear from you is, you know, do you have any advice, especially for our audience? Our audience tends to be a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. They tend to be people that have either said, okay, I want to do something different. I want to make a transition from either what I currently do. And I think you have a great story to share because, you were working full time and then transitioned to this. Um, and how to navigate that, how to make some of those decisions, and understanding it's a gradual process. It's not something that, you flip a switch and everything works. I think maybe either sharing a little bit of your story, or if you have direct advice for them, would be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of a little of both. So, one, I think we're in different places, personally, financially. All these different factors can play into how much of a risk we're ready or willing to take. And, for me, there were some gradual steps I took to build into this new path. But, at the same time, I'm also a very spiritual person. So there was a certain amount of spiritual guidance that sometimes led me to have to trust, even if I couldn't necessarily always see the next step clearly. So there was a balance between trying to follow some guidance, like, for example, some of the classes that Stephanie, you teach on your website. I've taken some of those, and so different things, and you and I have done some consulting together at different times. So having some tried and true guidance to have a foundation, to make sure I'm safe economically or that sort of thing, but at the same time, not realizing I can't always know the next step. Sometimes I have a certain amount of planning, but sometimes it's just through outreach and connecting with people and showing up for the next thing, making a plan to run, a next class and just doing it. And then things unfold that I couldn't have envisioned otherwise. So there's a certain amount of planning, and then there's a certain amount of just being able to trust and take the next step, and not always being able to see a million steps ahead of you. That's been a challenge, but also rewarding.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that people don't realize how rewarding it can be. Even though it can be a little bit scary, you can still have the butterflies. I tell a lot of people how important it is that you still have some of those butterflies because you still want to feel it. Like, you want to make sure that as you're deciding what your next step, you're taking, you're allowing yourself to grow. And sometimes those butterflies are just that growth and that stretch. They
Yeah,
aren't necessarily a danger signal. They're
that's a
really just,
good point.
letting you know that, hey, you are expanding. You are maybe going to that next level, and allowing yourself to kind of, try things that you don't have to have all the answers before you start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I would love to do in our time today is, and whether we want to go back to the book or just other work that you've done or other presentations you've done, I always love to give people some just tips, some recommendations, some ideas. So if anybody is struggling right now with their transformation, whether it's as an entrepreneur, whether it's their transformation of going vegan, or maybe they're just struggling with sometimes people are struggling in the like vegetarian vegan spot. Like, sometimes we all kind of get stuck in different places. Do you have any specific either recommendations or approaches or things that someone should be doing to make sure that they, move forward in the best way,
Mhm.
and also move forward in a way that serves them and, as you said, highlights and features their gift?
Yeah, so for those more in the vegan transformation part of it, where they're maybe transitioning to a plant-based or vegan lifestyle, on that side of it, I think connecting with your core values and your why is one foundational piece that, because whenever we're feeling stuck because we're having to learn a new skill or navigate a challenge that we haven't before, and this could be true for the entrepreneur too, if we're connected with our why and our values and the reasons we're doing this, it gives us a little more willingness to say, okay, it's worth it to be a little uncomfortable and learn new skills and break through whatever is blocking me here. So I think having a very clear like statement almost that reflects what are the values that matter most to me? How does this choice to go plant-based or vegan or run this business align with those values? And, really connecting with that first. And then that foundation then can make you willing to be different or be the one that is the odd one out, and then say, okay, now how am I going to handle the specific blocks or challenges that I might have? What resources do I need? What supports do I need? I know for me, for example, when I went from vegetarian to vegan, I read the book, The 30-Day Vegan Challenge by Colleen Patrick Gaudreau. And I'd read many other vegan books, but I read that specific book at that time because she had questions that helped me think through, like, what are the areas that are making it hard for me to transition from vegetarian to vegan, those final blocks that are standing in my way, and to get really clear about what they were and to come up with solutions for them and to have a time frame for them. And I think one final piece, whatever the transition is, you're making, whether it is into the vegan lifestyle or whether it is to thrive as a vegan entrepreneur, having support, having groups of people, whether online or in person, who are on the same journey that you can turn to and know you're not alone, because that can be our biggest deterrent to success if we try to do it all alone without any support. So those are a few things to start out.
Yeah, I love that about having support. I think sometimes we think we have to, like, tough it out all the time.
Yes,
And yes, there'll be some tricky times, tricky moments, but having someone to lean on, having someone to get feedback from,
exactly.
and also building that support system, because then, as you progress, not only do you move forward, but I also love to have, people I can, in a sense, celebrate with, people that understand where I was and where I've transformed to, and the fact that we can all kind of recognize that change.
Yes, exactly. And many of these groups and supports can be free supports like business networking groups, things like that. And then other times we might decide I need to invest in, professional support of some sort. And that can be really powerful and important too, because there's things that have unfolded for me that would not have if I hadn't gotten support from, for example, you and, someone to help me a little bit with publicity, during the book launch. So things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as we're wrapping up our time today, I know we could talk much, much, much longer, because I love talking about change. I love talking about, kind of expanding our ideas, our minds, and also love talking about the idea of kind of helping the world transition. I do want to make sure that when people listen to this, people watch this, they know how to get in touch with you. What is the best way to reach out? Is it email, social media, website, or all the above?
Yeah, so probably, my website is the easiest way because everything is linked on there. So it's angelacrawfordphd.com, and it has, a tab for my book. It has a contact tab, and it has other things like services and all of that. So, and, links to my social media too on the contact page.
Okay. And then one final question as we wrap up. Either A, if there's something specific parting words, anything you want people to hear or know as we wrap up today's session, definitely share that. If there's not something specific, then my one other question would be, is there anything that you know now that you wish you could have told your previous self, your previous version of yourself? What would that be? Because I'm curious if that message might help somebody who's struggling today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in response to your question, it'd be to value what I have to bring, um, and to trust inner guidance as I take next steps. Because I think before I felt like I had to fit into a certain mold, to maybe please other people. And, that's human to want to do that. But over time, I've come to realize, well, I do care about helping other people, but the way I can best help people is if I'm really grounded in my own values, and the value that I bring, and can from there show up bringing my gifts, trusting that when I feel a nudge, or a calling to something, there's something there and I need to explore it further rather than just do what's safe or expected all the time, that I can trust these little nudges of inner guidance and wisdom and take that next step, and that something more will unfold that I couldn't have anticipated.
That is beautifully said. I love that idea of the inner guidance because I do think sometimes we forget that sometimes we have such goodness within. The answers aren't always external. We do have it within, even if it's our first time doing it
Yes,
or our first time
yes.
trying something. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's always great to not only catch up what you're doing, but hear about the book, hear about the work you're doing, and also just feel inspired through your words. I love your word choice when I ask questions and you specifically, way you say some things, sometimes they just hit me right.
Oh, well,
Feel good
thank you.
inside.
Well, it
So
was so
I
wonderful to be here. Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. And for anyone who's watching this as a video or listening to this as a podcast, please always check out the show notes or the description below. We will link to the book. We will link to the website. We will make sure you get in touch with our guest, Angela, because I really think if you're going through a transition, going through a difficult time, or you just need clarity, like you don't need the stress it doesn't have to be a problem as a reason to move forward. Sometimes you're just looking for that clarity on your next step. I really think the tools, I really think even, getting some time with Angela will be great as well as following a lot of her great work, through speaking engagements and so forth. So highly recommend you reach out to our guest this week. Thank you as always, everyone who listens, who supports, who gives us our thumbs ups and our likes. We always, always love ya for that. And we look forward to seeing you in our next interview. Bye, everyone.